Saying no is not a superpower. I know all of the other Be an Alpha Warlord YouTube channels say it is, but they're wrong. And you and I, we're going to get back on the right track. I've only been on social media a few years, but I've noticed that every so often there's a flurry of activity around this idea that saying no is a superpower. Apparently, if you're going to be an alpha, you have to master the skill of guarding your time and resources so preciously that you find the inner strength and primal courage to say no to every request and everyone who wants a minute but isn't running a tab yet. And that idea is nonsense. Saying no is the most basic of social skills. Ask your parents. They'll tell you that you mastered saying no by age 2. Look, a superpower has to be something that goes beyond what every competent man can do. I can't fly. Flying is a superpower. I can't turn invisible. Turning invisible is a superpower. But saying no when too much is asked of you or when a request conflicts with higher obligations isn't a superpower. It's just what men have to do sometimes. I don't have to tell all of you beautiful motherf***ers the difficulty that young men face growing up these days. We're all aware that too many kids grow up without a father. The schools don't have male teachers, and Homer Simpson is the model for father figures on TV. The schools insist on giving energetic boys drugs, and we're surrounded by a culture where being too manly is suspect. Video games have replaced athletics, and even more significantly, they've replaced just going outside and playing in the woods without the supervision of a hovering adult that would rather be someplace else. Boys don't get a chance to say no when all of their activities are supervised and planned by adults. They don't develop real peer relationships because their friend groups are all artificial mashups designed for the convenience of the adult supervising. If they say no during this supervised play, they get told to play nice. And so they grow up never being able to say no to the childhood activities and relationships that have been chosen for them by authority figures. As a result of all this, boys just don't seem to develop certain basic skills, basic attributes. And I think maybe knowing when to say no might be on this list. There are going to be times when one interest conflicts with another, when your boss wants you to stay late for work even though it means missing your kid's game or recital. Is it impossible to say no to your employer? It might seem that way. Sometimes it seems like men are expected to be treated as serfs by their employer. And when I was in the Army, I didn't get very many opportunities to say no. And so in that sense, I kind of see the point the alpha gurus want to make. To these boys, now men, that never learned to say no to the authority figures in their lives, their employer, the government, advertisers, it might look like a superpower when some of us say no, but it's not. Some causes are worth making massive sacrifices for. Most aren't. Once you understand what matters to you and how much it matters, saying no to so many things simply becomes routine. When your cousin Martha contacts you on Facebook to get you interested in her MLM, it's not a superpower to say no. I love you, Martha, and I love those candles, but I am not going to sell them, and you're not having a party at my house. And it's not a superpower to tell your sister no, you won't watch that big hair-shedding dog of hers while she's away for a few days. But it might be a superpower when you can tell her that you've got her house payment covered for as long as it takes while she can't work because of the chemo. As men, the superpower comes when we understand what matters to us and develop our ability to say yes. When my mother calls and tells me she needs the yard mowed, it's not a superpower to say, "No, Ma, I'm not riding to Little Rock to mow the yard." At the same time, I'm not heading to Little Rock to mow my mother's yard. But I'll make a couple of phone calls. I'll get somebody over there to mow that yard. Because I have an obligation to make my mother's life easier. Maybe you don't. Maybe your life has been such that you really don't owe anybody anything. That's tragic, but it's a choice you have to make. Once that choice is made, whether you say yes or no, it's kind of automatic, not a superpower. In fact, When people you have an obligation to and a relationship with ask for your help or even your mere attention, saying no makes you weak or... I'm not suggesting that you have to sacrifice every minute of your day and all of your strength for others. The only people obligated to sacrifice every minute of their day and all of their efforts for others are slaves. And I suppose being able to say no might look like a superpower to anyone with a slave mentality. Part of the Kshatriya Dharma, that's the rules to live by for the Hindu warrior caste, says that it's impious to abandon anyone who calls on you for aid, even an enemy. The idea is that people don't go to the powerless for help. If you go to the bank and ask to borrow $1 million, every clerk in there has the authority to tell you no. The person that can tell you yes probably isn't even in the building. You want to be that man who can give the people you care about what they need without hesitation. And it's not that you have an obligation to provide according to your ability. It's that you have an obligation to develop your ability according to the chosen duty to provide for others. But the number of people that have an actual right to impose on you is probably very, very small. You have to decide for yourself who you have legitimate obligations to. You have to discover for yourself who you cannot say no to. For the Norse, being known as a despiser of gold was a compliment. It meant you'd give away everything for the good of your tribe, that you valued honor and glory more than mere gold. Besides, if we give a fortune away today, we'll go get another by Wednesday. And the rabbi said, if you're asked to carry a load 1 mile, you should carry it for 2. Why? To prove you're a badass. I'll admit I'm less certain I agree with that one. But those are my choices. You have to make yours. The degree to which you are willing to suffer for others is your choice, your decision. But refusing people should never feel like a superpower like it did when you were 2 years old. The superpower is being the man who can say yes when others can't or won't. It's a superpower to feed the kids falling behind on their lunch payments at school. It's a superpower to be a CASA volunteer and represent kids in foster care. It's a superpower to volunteer at the library to tutor kids. Because the superpower is helping the people that need you get things done. Hey, do you remember that scene in Breaking Bad when Mike was walking down the street and those assholes came up behind him and one asked to borrow $20? How did you feel watching that? Mike proceeded to say no and beat those guys senseless. Did you think even then that saying no was a superpower? Or did you recognize that sometimes men have to do man stuff? Were you jealous? Were you afraid you'd have given the $20 and hoped it was over? Did saying no seem like a superpower? Or do you think every man has an obligation to develop that kind of mental strength and physical prowess? I really do want to know what you think. Drop a message down in the comments or send me an email. I know my email address is somewhere on this channel.